Hello and welcome to the Note to File podcast, a collection of interviews, best practices, and candid commentary for clinical research sites. My name is Brad Hightower. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I do want to apologize. There's been quite a delay since my last drop of episodes. Just been a crazy time in general, although we do have several episodes recorded and sort of locked and loaded, ready to go. So expect to see a lot more activity here, a lot of new guests in the near future. Our guest today is Laura Holtz, a senior research manager at Indiana University Center for Aging Research and Regenstrief Institute. She oversees multiple federally funded grants and investigator-initiated research trials, including projects with cognitively impaired adults in the community and nursing facility settings. As a research staff advocate, Laura established the Indianapolis chapter of SOCRA, which provides education opportunities for staff to become certified clinical research professionals. She's presented several times at the Sokra annual conference and SOCRA chapter meetings. Her dedication to research education earned her a seat on the SOCRA Board of Directors in 2018. In this episode, we discuss, as always, the importance of being a generalist in clinical research, the idea of clinical research as customer service, and the importance of authenticity in communication. Without further ado, Laura Holtz.
All right, Laura Holtz, thank you so much for coming on today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, so we had to reschedule due to the weather. I apologize for that. We talked about that. Unfortunately, I can't control the weather, even though I've tried.
As we all try to do at our sites, we try to control everything.
Yeah, right. For better or worse sometimes.
Always.
So as always, I like to start out with, I like to hear about people's origin stories. So tell me a little bit about how you got into clinical research and kind of up until where you are now.
Yeah, so my story is kind of like everybody else's. I didn't know about this profession and fell into it. I think we hear that quite often, but mine's a little bit more convoluted than that. So I actually trained to be a high school English and speech communications teacher. Taught for a couple of years, wasn't quite the right fit, and I started kind of thinking about what other options I had. Took some twists and turns and some jobs along the way, and kind of through my experiences, I had heard a presentation by one of the investigators at Regenstrief Institute, and that's where I currently am employed. And I've been working my whole research career at Regenstrief. And so I heard a presentation about how to use electronic medical records and data for research. And it was a very entry-level presentation, but I was really inspired and intrigued. And so then I started looking into the organization and the company. And just to kind of give you a little bit of background, Regenstrief, it's a nonprofit research institution. It's looking at research and supporting the research of Indiana University. And they have research in biomedical informatics and health services research and aging. And so when I started looking into the organization, I was pretty intrigued, and they had a job posted for a research coordinator. And I was like, well, I've been a project manager for a couple of years, and I know how to manage projects. So how hard and different can it be? And so I very naively threw my hat into the ring for that position. And then once I got into it, I really found that I really enjoy and love the innovation and the investigation of research. It really serves my project management mind to set up things in processes and with SOPs. And we joke that I love SOPs. So it was one of those things that not everybody loves SOPs, but they really work well for me. And it matches really well with my training as a teacher to have metrics and to have rubrics and to understand how you do things in a logical way to get to an answer of some question of some sort. So working in research really combined a lot of the things that I really enjoy, those things about teaching and learning and having, very systematic processes to get to an answer and finding new knowledge and investigating these, hard questions and getting answers. And I really was drawn to that. And so I started as an entry-level research coordinator and learned the ropes from those who were working in the Center for Aging and continued to kind of grow my skill set from there. And I've been working at Regenstrief for now more than 13 years. And I'm at that level of the senior research manager, which, title-wise really means that I'm working for multiple investigators on investigator-initiated trials and staffing those trials and ensuring that they're successful, that we can, from that grant inception to closing out studies and publishing on our results. So just kind of worked my way through the ranks to understand the research as a profession, and then also, where my fit was within it.
Sure. And then, again, I say again and again, I think this is part of the beauty of clinical research. I think there's really, whatever your interest is, there's a little piece of it somewhere in clinical research. And then it really comes down to, how much can you hone in on that, or how much can you sort of expand out from that? But again, what's so great about it is that I think whatever your interest is, or interests are, or even where your values are, that it's somewhere in there in clinical research, if you know where to look.
Oh, there are opportunities for anybody in this profession. I've got a data manager who just is fascinated by the data, and I can't get my head wrapped around it. Can't figure out what she loves about it, but she and I work really well together and have worked well together for a long time because we complement each other so well. If it's a data question, I'm going to go to her. If it's a procedural question, we typically will look at my expertise and my area of interest. And so really finding your colleagues and your cohorts that work well together really makes the research exciting. It makes that teamwork, that dynamic working environment fun. Everybody gets to have a strength. And I think that that's important.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think it's important to have a full understanding of the breadth and depth of clinical research and to be very well-rounded. But I mean, let's be honest, we're not all good at everything. I mean, we're just not. I'll say publicly, I'm not a very good research coordinator as far as that particular aspect of the job when it comes to very detailed data collection. It's not the way my mind works. I don't like it. I mean, I can do it. I don't like it. So just like you said, if you can find those strengths and put together a team that complements each other, I mean, there's obviously a ridiculous amount of value in that. And I don't know that that's always appreciated when, sometimes a lot of sites ask their coordinators or managers to do everything.
Yeah, the generalist is important. I mean, it's important that we know how all the pieces fit together, but finding that passion of those specialty areas that you personally thrive in, I think is important. We can all kind of do the regulations and we can meet those specifications that we have to, and we know those things. But it's that where you get excited about the research, where you get excited about something that you're contributing to this large process, because clinical trials is such a long and lengthy process that where you can get excited about your piece in that long process, it is rewarding. It is valued and valuable. So yeah, it's fascinating. I don't know very many people who get super excited about those SOPs and making sure everybody, knows how to do things. But it's how my brain works, and being able to optimize that and being able to help people to, cut out the waste in their jobs and not have to do the things that maybe aren't meaningful if they aren't necessary. Like, let's figure that out. Let's optimize that. I think that that's a cool innovation in something that's kind of prescribed in clinical trials.
Yeah, it is. And again, that's awesome that you've been able to find that fit for yourself. I know there's a lot of people still looking for it within their career. So that's really awesome. So tell me a little bit about Regenstrief. You guys do mostly, sounds like investigator initiated trials rather than your sort of more run of the mill drug and device studies.
Yeah. So they do have some drug and device trials that different folks are running. Regenstrief really, it was founded as an institute by Sam Rengenstrief, who actually is a manufacturing person and saw that there was a need for manufacturing in healthcare. And so even in our office foyer, we have a dishwasher because that's what Sam Regenstrief manufactured, was dishwashers. So we really think about the process of healthcare and thinking about how to make innovative strategies to do it better. So not doing drug and device trials kind of makes sense when you know our origin story. We're looking at healthcare delivery, we're looking at implementation science, we're looking at, translational science. So taking those best practices that we know work in the clinical setting and being able to put them into the healthcare setting. So I've worked about the last 8 years on a project that was funded by Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, where we were trying to take best practices into the nursing home environment. And, the program was called Optimistic because that's what we felt about it. We felt it was interestingly an acronym, but I can't always remember what it stands for. But the purpose of the acronym was to have a feeling is that we felt optimistic that we could do this in a really, kind of tough health system. Nursing homes are tough. They are very highly regulated. They have a lot of challenges, but they are doing such great things for people who are vulnerable and oftentimes at the end of life. So really wanting to have a very positive program in a really difficult setting was what we worked on for 8 years and had very positive results in that trial. So it really is this idea of taking things and making efficiencies, just like they have done oftentimes in those manufacturing type of jobs. So, when Regenstrief became its own institute in 2002, it's a nonprofit. It's a research organization that is meant to support and to provide that infrastructure to really make efficiencies in the research project. So one of the kind of unique things about being with Regenstrief is, there are multiple investigators. There's 50 or so investigators at Regenstrief. So when I finish, learning from one on one trial, I can then be moved to another trial and be able to take with me those experiences that I had on those first trials and then apply them. So we're not always constantly retraining new coordinators. We have a wealth of knowledge that continues to grow because we continue to keep staff in one kind of environment, one organization. And that's true with both HSR, Health Services Research Organization, and they're working primarily with our VA. We've got a very robust, aging research group that's looking from everything from dementia to delirium to, using AI with older people to aging healthy. And so I can take those skills that I learned on one trial and transfer them to the next trial with a different investigator to help really hit the ground running. And so that's something that I think is a little bit unique about working in this research institution that supports an academic research program.
Right. No, and that's very cool. I mean, I spend a lot of time talking about more of your sort of independent site organization. So something like this is sort of a hybrid between, your standard academic model and then your sort of standalone private research site. So it's very interesting. Sounds very interesting to me that you guys are able to work with, maybe multiple groups, obviously multiple physicians within those groups, and sort of bring together those partnerships. It's a very interesting idea and something I don't know that I've specifically thought of. Do you guys find it difficult to work with these sort of larger institutions and sort of any red tape that comes up along the way?
We navigate those as we need to, but by having this partnership with Indiana University, we are affiliate status. We, utilize part of their infrastructure. My emails through Indiana University. We get to take classes and trainings through Indiana University. We utilize their human subjects office. So we build those partnerships to overcome some of those barriers. Oftentimes people don't realize that I'm not part of the university, that I actually am employed by a different organization. And by having that seamless transition, by working in that community, and it really does go to the research community. We you don't see the difference of who your employer is, but rather we're part of that general university
right.
Research community. So a lot of those have been navigated over the years as we continue to work side by side.
Sure. No, that makes perfect sense. So it's just interesting. I've never really thought about partnership quite like that. So you're sort of integrated within, but still standalone in some ways, I assume.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, that's very cool. That's and again, that's sort of the beauty of clinical research is that, we talk about institutional sites and we talk about private sites and nonprofit sort of in between the two. So, there's a full spectrum of where you can really land depending on what your specific interests are. So I think this is awesome because I think this is a completely unique perspective compared to anyone else, that I've had on here. So I find that again super intriguing.
It's been fascinating for me being kind of naive and, kind of novice to research to come and be like, well, doesn't everybody work like this? Isn't this how everything works? So I really have that perspective that I can appreciate what the unique challenges, but also the opportunities that it brings. So, I'm really grateful to be able to work really closely with colleagues at Indiana University and, utilizing the expertise of the auditing office, because with investigator initiated, we're doing a lot of our own we have every part of the process that we're responsible for. So having to do our own monitoring and auditing, we don't necessarily have an external CRO or CRA coming in and helping us with that. And so, well, how do you do that? What do you do?
Right.
How do I learn that? Where can I go take a class? Who at the university has those resources that I can ask about? And it really does get into what I find fascinating with research is just like you and I were talking about before, the networking and the getting to know other people and what are they doing and how do they do it and how can I beg, borrow, and steal into help my own processes on the projects that I'm working on. So that part of networking and hearing everybody's unique experience has been fascinating, and I really enjoy hearing those stories from others too.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, again, regardless of how diversified we are, I think that we do share a lot of the same challenges and the same successes for that matter. So I mean, that's that's why I'm doing this, so we can all sort of live through each other's experiences in some way and sort of take what we can without necessarily having to always reinvent the wheel. So that's what I love about talking.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges I do still see about research is that trying to convey that knowledge to others who are in the field. So networking can only get us so far until you find the right person that you need to talk to, and then that person is helping you to kind of think through your problem or your process, but really to help to set some foundations for training and set some benchmarks to be, if you want to go into this route, these are some classes or some trainings or some resources to really start with so that you don't feel like you're constantly having to find the right person who has the answer or find the right person who can help you out with that question. That really is one of the areas that I think is a challenge, but I think it's something that we are, like this podcast, like the professional organizations and the trainings that are being held and convened, I think they're really helping to solve this problem.
Sure. And to speak to that, so you're part of the SOCRA Board of Directors, is that right?
Yes, I am. I'm currently on their board of directors, and I've also participated. And my road with Sokra has been fun because it really was out of a challenge that I got involved with that organization. So again, new coordinator, not quite sure what I was doing, didn't quite know who to call, knew my research organization, but wasn't really tied in yet with the university. Went to Sokra and said, do we have a chapter here in Indiana? And they said, nope. Do you want to start one? And I said, yes, I do. And so we started a chapter. I was the first person to do our talk at our chapter back when we started it. And I grabbed one of my colleagues at Indiana and said, hey, I don't know what I'm getting into, but do you want to help me start a chapter here in Indiana? And she willingly and graciously said yes. And she and I have been kind of working on this for about the last 6 years or so, but really trying to bring a training forum for the membership. And what I love about the professional organizations and this community is that it's open to anybody, right? Like if you find a topic that you need or want to go see, you go to it. You start attending. And so having that kind of open community to start talking about these topics and bringing speakers in. And, I've always had the belief that everybody is an expert at something that they do in their job. There is an area that you are expert at. So come and tell us about it so that we can learn from you.
Yeah, and that's even though so much of the industry seems sort of siloed in ways. I really do. I think everybody's hungry for more information, and what else they can do to help be better at what they do within the clinical research industry. So that's something I think I've definitely experienced as well. Is that there's everybody. I think everybody's out to learn more, which is very encouraging.
Well, and COVID has been such a interesting time, and we've been faced a lot of challenges, but it has opened up opportunities too. So we went from in-person chapter meetings, if you could attend, if you were local. We had some groups calling in, but it wasn't always as easy. Now with our Zoom platforms and with some of these technologies, we're able to host meetings with 100 plus people multiple times a month. It's pretty low bar to be able to host these and get them out there. So really feeling like we can contribute even when we're kind of still, I'm still at home. We're not back in our office or our clinics yet for my studies. So for us to be able to continue to offer those educational environments, those opportunities to network, those, seeing familiar faces, seeing familiar names that we had seen prior to COVID, still maintaining those relationships and knowing that there are folks out there that we can continue to call on and seek advice and consultation and just camaraderie with has been good. I agree. I'm getting Zoom fatigues like everybody else, but
Right.
but it also has been feeling like there's something we can be doing when we're still, like I said, still at home and still a little bit more restricted in what we're able to do. So that's been good. I've been hopeful about that.
Sure. Yeah, I guess silver lining. Then there it is.
We got to find them. We got to keep looking for them.
That's right. That's right. So tell me, if you had to share one best practice with other sites or research professionals, what would that be?
I already talked about the networking, which I really do believe in. After getting into research, I went back to get my master's degree, and I actually got my master's in communication sciences because I started to recognize that, how we interact, like we've been talking about here, that the training pieces and the interpersonal connections with others in the industry and connecting with our patient populations, those who are trying to recruit into studies or maintaining recruitment through the duration of study enrollment. Those messages are really unique. Looking at health literacy, looking at how much we use acronyms and when we talk and how abbreviated our language is, are we really getting across the messages that we want to the audience that we intending it to be communicated with? So really started thinking about this idea of how do we engage with our colleagues and our participants. And so communication has been a huge kind of best practice that I continue to think about for each kind of step of the process. So who am I communicating with? What is my message that I am communicating? Am I listening and hearing effectively what I'm receiving back from them? Is it an engagement and a collaboration that we're both feeling, we're getting the information or the knowledge or the experience that we both need to be passionate and fulfilled in whatever the encounter is. So, networking, communicating effectively, those are two really kind of corner posts for me in this industry. A lot of the rest of it falls in place when those are done well. And, communication is one of those soft skills that we talk about. We had the classes in high school, the communication classes and things like that, but really to hone those and really be purposeful and meaningful with our communication, I find it fascinating. I find it so valuable for me to do my job well.
Yeah, no, I think that it's very much underrated, and something I've sort of been putting in my mind lately is that, to a large degree, clinical research is a lot like customer service.
Yes, it is.
And when you think about the elements of customer service, you think about understanding, listening, and responding in a way that, relates to the person you're talking to, and, being able to serve them the best way that you can and the way in which they need to be. So I think when you sort of take that mindset with whether it's with your investigator or a sponsor or a patient, I think it crosses all those boundaries. So again, I mean, not just communication, but the way that you communicate and, with keeping in mind who you're communicating with, is a very underrated skill to sort of have that emotional intelligence, I guess, to discern the difference.
Well, and with communication, you really do get to your authentic self. You get to who you genuinely are. Communication isn't one of those things that you can actually fake really well. It comes through very clearly. So if we have our subjects, our participants as our first focus when we're recruiting, the language looks a little different. It doesn't look like the informed consent forms that we have to get signed that feel like they've been, massaged and kind of manipulated by whomever was looking out for a very specific purpose. The conversations around informed consent and good quality informed consent look really different than the forms themselves.
Sure.
So trying to integrate that personal, that's why we've always, now I know that we're getting some technology resources in with informed consent, but we've always typically done informed consent in person with the person sitting next to you and having a conversation and really focusing on, well, what is the ask of that conversation? What do I hope that I get out of it as the research professional? And what do I hope that the participant gets out of it? And am I conveying, the trust and the relationship building that I hope a good informed consent conversation is intended to do? Am I doing that well? And doing good by the person that I'm speaking with? That really puts a whole different dimension on getting informed consent, right?
Right.
Check box that regulatory requirement. It's a whole different component. It's a whole different way to look at it. And I find it fascinating as we continue to move into these high quality interactions with our participants, because that's how we're going to ensure trust with them. That's how they're going to want to engage with us for future trials, or if they're, presented studies in the future, that they will be able to know that this is a trustworthy activity for them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think, sometimes we're too clinical in clinical research. It is about building that trust and that relationship, I think, with your patients that, again, makes all the difference between whether they remain in the study or end up dropping out early because they aren't getting the attention, or they're not being, sort of served the way that they need to be. So again, I do think that's a ridiculously important distinction. That's, it happens to all of us. We get going in our jobs and we're talking to patients and it becomes a little robotic sometimes over time. So being able to sort of stand back and, like you said, I think that remember the values that you have and that you're including in your work, and a lot of that can be sort of brought back to center, if you will.
Yeah, and it is a heavy lift for clinical research professionals to all the things that we have to remember with the regulatory requirements, and the protocols are hundreds of pages long, and it is a big job. And to add one more thing to that and say, okay, now don't forget about the patient. I recognize how that sounds so simple to say, of course we're going to remember that, but there are a lot of demands in this job, and to navigate gracefully all of them is hard. And so it does deserve the acknowledgement and the credit that it is a hard job and people are doing it very, very well.
Yeah, no question about that. So what are some resources you use in your job, or anything you find indispensable that you'd share with the greater clinical research community?
Yeah, funny you mentioned, you and I were talking in the intro or before we started about podcasts. I'm a huge podcast connoisseur. I find podcasts incredibly entertaining, but also really helpful to think about different topics in a new way, but also to do it while I'm multitasking. So
right,
listening to podcasts on those commutes, and when I'm walking the dog, and when I'm making dinner. And I'm really excited about the boom in podcasts. So I do have, I have my entertainment ones, but then I also have some kind of more leadership and business oriented podcasts that I do think, and interestingly, project management podcasts really align well with what we do in research, to think about the process, to think about how to streamline what we do because we have so much to do. How do we streamline or have activities do double duty for us to make us work smarter, not harder? I know Edie said that last time. So, I think that there are things out there, there are tools out there that look at them with the lens of our profession. Really, really is a valuable resource out there. Like I said, I'm a huge communication advocate. I really think communication has a lot to do with every aspect of this role. So I have glommed onto and I've championed the AHRQ Health Literacy Toolkit. I have a copy on my desktop. I go to it probably once a week. It has wonderful tools and just ways to think about communicating with our subjects and our investigators in a way that meets those needs. So it kind of does takes those soft skills and really puts some tangible metrics around them and tries to help understand how can I do this better? What are some tools to be able to do this better? I've been a huge champion of it for years, and it's a great resource. It's a free resource. It's just out there. Definitely would encourage everybody to look into it. And then honestly, I look for any kind of templates out there, and I try and contribute as much as I can to, what has somebody done before that I can use to modify rather than starting from scratch. So, my grants are funded through the NIA, so I typically use the National Institutes of Health website, and they've got templates on there for a lot of stuff. So really starting to say, okay, let me see how I can work smarter. What can I find on the internet? What can I modify to meet the needs that I have so that these task level responsibilities become something that's very routine, and I can then spend more energy and time on some of these other bigger, more complex issues like, how to increase recruitment in a population that maybe is hesitant to talk with me, or, where do I need to expand my enrollment to meet those numbers that I have this month, or what have you.
Are there any specific podcasts you'd call out just out of curiosity?
So I really like Unlocking Us and Dare to Lead with Brene Brown, because she's a researcher out of Houston. She really combines the topics about vulnerability and leadership and gives all the research evidence and backup that we as researchers like to hear about too. So she's one of my favorites. I love listening to 99% Invisible. It's a Radiotopia podcast, and it talks about design in our everyday life. So it will talk about things like how sidewalks are structured to accommodate people with disabilities. And these are the design features about that you don't maybe recognize because it's invisible to us. We just assume that it works. So I find that podcast incredibly fascinating. You're Wrong About is a podcast hosted by a writer for the Huffington Post, and it talks about stories in pop culture that we thought we knew right, but we actually probably don't know. And so Stuff You Should Know, and just all these podcasts about kind of everyday topics that I think I know about, but really I don't really know all the ins and outs of, because I'm not an expert in them, right? Like I can't know everything. So I really find some of those kind of where it's just everyday things that have been explained to me in a different way. I find those fascinating.
Awesome. I'm always looking for more podcasts myself. So I'm glad to get your opinion there. So that's awesome.
Yeah, the downside of it is that there are so many podcasts out there that then I become sad that I have to miss listening to all of them, because I do want to. There's too many choices. Which one am I going to listen to today? No, I really do find listening to podcasts and learning, on those kind of unique times, those times where I didn't think I would be able to engage in something, like when I'm, doing dishes. I really find that as a rewarding outlet.
Yep, I'm right there with you. Well, very good. Well, tell me, where can people find you online, Laura?
Yeah, probably my most active is on LinkedIn. I do have a profile there. I typically will respond to messaging or direct messaging there, but that's usually the easiest place to find me is on LinkedIn at this point.
All right, very cool. Anything else before we go?
No, just thank you so much for having me on, and I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much, and we'll talk again soon. Thanks, Laura.
Once again, thank you for tuning in to the Note to File podcast. Please take the opportunity to rate, review, and subscribe on whichever podcast platform you use. We really love to hear feedback from the community. I'd love to hear more about what other research sites and other research professionals want to hear about on these podcasts. So please feel free to reach out directly at brad@notetofilepodcast.com. And make sure to check us out at notetofilepodcast.com. Thanks again.